Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it. So here's what you get. From Canada, Ryan and
Jason. Welcome to the worst of the best podcast, and joining me today again and again. As I said again, Jason, I realized I shouldn't just say again anymore. Joining me today is my brother, Jason, who I guess is officially, unofficially, kind of just the second host of the show. I don't know if you've accepted this mantle, but more or less, but so you're the first person I call. So if things work out, you come on, but you are my first call. And if anyone's offended by that, so be it. You are my brother, and blood is thicker than water. So, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be back. I appreciate knowing that I'm at the top of the list. It feels good.
Well, I sort of lied. Ruben actually is the first, but not every week.
Let's be honest. Did you call him?
No. I talked to him the other day. I talked to him in person because I'm back in Victoria, British Columbia. I've moved back to the island. Anyone that cares or even knows what I'm talking about.
I care. I'm happy to see you back in our province.
So I'm back in British Columbia, and I went on a walk with Ruben and his family the other day. And I just said to him, I said, Ruben, as you know, I just want to make sure you know, of course, the invitation is just, it's an open. We'd love to have you back. I want to podcast with you. And I'm sure with you on, we'd just do it together anyways. The three of us would be fun. Again, he's just not in a place in his life now. Nothing bad, but he's just going through the stuff that COVID's providing him and his family and all that good stuff and his job stuff. And so he's just not in a podcast hobby frame of mind, which is totally understandable. He doesn't want to be disingenuous to the listeners. So
no, understandable. I understand his circumstance.
But he loves that you're doing it.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, well, speaking of fun, we hinted at our last episode. We talked about space sounds, and so if you're jumping onto this podcast because you saw that this was a moon landing hoax episode, and you get a kick out of conspiracy theories and those type of topics, we've done a few on the podcast. So go back and look at the feed. We've done ones on Antarctica, conspiracy theories in general, other hoaxes. Last week we did space sounds, and during that discussion on space sounds, we're like, hey, the moon, of course, came up, and we kind of joked about, hey, we should do a moon landing hoax episode, a conspiracy episode, because those are always fun, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, let's do it. This is opening up a can of worms. Whether it's real or not, it is fun to talk about.
We're given the news, meaning we are saying what the conspiracy theory is and or hoax, but we may or may not say how we think that's a valid, I can see how that might be a tricky thing to debunk, how the argument for the hoax, so to speak.
Yeah, we're just going to be talking about kind of the top 10 reasons why people think it is a hoax. I'm not going to be able to debunk. I don't have enough information or intelligence or education on moon and engineering and stuff to try and debunk anything. I just have fun with it. Who hasn't had fun looking at these different issues?
What I love about conspiracy theories is the connections or the things that people find or come up with are clever enough that I'm like, it's amazing how powerful suggestion might be. I guess that could be another episode in this, how we're susceptible to suggestion, things that we never saw before or even look to thinking about. All of a sudden we are, and then then we start questioning everything. Like, if that is happening, then what else is happening? If this is happening, what else might not be? What are we not seeing that we haven't been shown? So I think
even more recently, I mean, the moon has been a source of conspiracy for years, but flat earthers more recently in recent history.
We did a flat earth episode.
Okay. So the thought that would ever be an issue growing up, and then like in the last 5 years, it's a thing.
Right.
If you ever watch their videos, some of their arguments
they're fun.
Are convincing.
Yeah, it's
They're
crazy.
Like, I can see how people can get brought into this. And really, as an outsider, just normal Joe, other than saying, I've been told it's round. the Earth round.
That's my evidence. That's the only evidence I have. And to be fair, that's what flat earthers will say to somebody like me is like, well, there you go.
Exactly.
You were just told this, and what's your proof that it's round? I don't have any proof. I'd be pointing to the same NASA produced picture to say, look, there's the there's the NASA.
That's all I have. That's all I have is an education of
what I've been told.
Yeah.
So that's what makes conspiracy theories fun is what do we know? I don't know anything. I have no idea. But here we go. Some of these will be very interesting to dissect. Very baseline dissection. We're not going to spend a lot of time on each one. We're just going to give the headline, what the argument is, and our general thoughts. And overall, we're going to give at the end, independent of each other. We don't know at this point what each other is picking. We are going to decide what we think, the one that's least likely to be true. There's 10 things that claim to prove that the moon landing's fake or a hoax. Which is the weakest argument. So if you are a conspiracy theorist and you believe that this is the moon landing as a hoax, and you've given me 10 reasons why I should believe that, I, as an observer, will say, well, of the 10, I think this is the worst one. The weakest argument that it's a hoax. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll discuss each point as we go one by one.
I have fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
I have fun with these ideas.
I will say the moon landing is kind of like the jumping off point or the one before this one that interested me was, of course, the JFK assassination. I think the JFK assassination cover-up, essentially, is the one that kind of started me on my own personal path of, what else have we been maybe lied about from government or people in power? And let's just be honest. The one thing we can all agree on as listeners, if you honestly believe the people in power and position of power over you have always told you the truth, you're an idiot.
Well, I'm definitely not an idiot because I know they lie.
Yeah, so people in power will lie to you for their own personal reason. Whatever those, they might think it's for your own good, but still, I honestly believe we should never be lied to. That's just my own personal belief. But
yeah.
Okay, so here we go. The theory that the moon landings were hoaxed by the U.S. government to assert their victory in the space race over Russia is something which has grown in popular culture over time. And like Jason said, it's gotten more play and more eyes on this idea. Well, because of the internet, people come together from all parts around the world, sharing their evidence, sharing their theories, sharing their stories. And the audience has grown because of the internet. But did you know, Jason, that recent polls indicate that approximately 20% of Americans believe that NASA or the U.S. program has never put man on the moon? After the Apollo missions ended in the 70s, did you know that we haven't been back?
Yes. Yeah.
That to me right there is, now it doesn't mean we didn't land on the moon, but that's the biggest why. And there's also videos out there that's not even a part of our list. Apparently NASA destroyed the information on how to land on the moon.
I know.
I don't understand that.
There's more evidence outside of this. I mean, we have a list of 10.
Right.
And they're the most common 10 that we hear.
But there's so much.
You can go down this rabbit hole on YouTube. Hole. You can see the evidence.
If this 10 tickles your fancy, I'd recommend challenging your own. Like, I had no idea. That's weird. That can't be right. These guys are crazy. Then go ahead and just go down your own rabbit hole and see all this other evidence, like the one I just brought up, that there is legitimate interview evidence of people saying, yes, we destroyed. Apparently, they don't even have the data on how to do it again.
Yes, I've seen. Yes, they've.
Again, the question is, why would they do that? Why would you do that? Why would you? Yeah.
One of the most historical events of our lifetime, and you don't have the foresight to protect those tapes.
Not just not the foresight to protect them, but to willingly destroy them.
Tape over them or whatever they did. I think actually one of the biggest evidences of a hoax. It's interesting how as technology improved in Hollywood, so did the footage of all the like moonwalks and the CGI, them grabbing the ball in front of them. And
well, take it for what it's worth, ladies and gentlemen. But if you go on the internet or even on YouTube, there's some space station stuff where they've actually have caught people doing space station walks and they're on wires, and you can tell they're on wires. It's odd. At the very least, why are they doing this? Now, I'm not saying there isn't a space station, but the videos that they stream to CNN, like, look, we're at the space station. They've actually shown and proven that they're on wires.
Yeah. And water bubbles on their, have you seen the water bubbles coming out of their?
Yeah. So, and they have green screens behind them. It's all been proven. Maybe they have to have green screens in the space station. I don't know. Maybe there's a reason.
Oh boy.
So
it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, at the very least, it's fun, and to me, it gives more questions than answers. Okay, one of the biggest ones is we haven't been back. You could argue, well, what else is there to do on the moon? Okay, fair. You could just say it's a waste of money and resources just to keep walking on that rock. Okay, that might be an answer, but we haven't been told why we haven't been back, or I don't know why we haven't been back. It was only during the term of Richard Nixon did humanity ever land on the moon. I will say another interesting little tidbit that wasn't brought up in this list that we're about to provide. Nixon, if you remember, he had a phone call conversation with the astronauts in space. Yeah, now, again, this is true. We're just saying he had a phone call conversation. We can't even get Zoom to work half the time in 2021, but Nixon in 1969 had a televised live stream conversation with the astronauts on the moon.
We can't get satellite phones. You know, when somebody's like, I'm in Afghanistan, a reporter, and they're having a conversation on CNN, that conversation is completely delayed with modern day technology, cell phones / satellite phones. And his conversation was a conversation that we're having. It's almost instantaneous. It's like a normal phone call.
1969, July 20th, President Richard M. Nixon spoke from the White House by radio telephone with Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong and with Buzz Aldrin as they walked on the surface. So they were on the surface of the moon during that conversation. So they had their headsets on. So they were talking with their helmets on.
Dude, back then computers took up like one story, one floor of a building. Do you know what I mean? Like the technological, our smartphones are probably more powerful than any computer system they had to launch and bring back the people from the moon. Yeah, it's interesting.
No, again, this could just be our ignorance showing that they just had.
That's exactly it. I don't have enough information. My intelligence isn't strong enough to be able to combat some of the things that people.
My argument is they had the technology. Okay, in 1969 to call the moon with the White House telephone, but why is it so hard to get reception in my second floor of my house in the woods or something?
Exactly. That's kind of what my point of the satellite phone. Yeah.
We'll get it figured out one day, 50 years later. Okay. In this list, Jason and I will present some of the evidence that proposes or suggests that the moon landings were a hoax or fake. In some of these, we'll try to include NASA's explanations to each entry to provide an objective perspective. So again, we are not saying this is what we believe. This is, again, what conspiracy theorists have pointed out or have come up with on their own through their own investigations. And to be fair, we're going to show or say how NASA says, well, this is what's going on. And you, the listener, can decide for yourself in this little quick investigation. So Jay, why don't you go with number 10?
Okay. Yeah. So number 10, the infamous waving flag on the moon. Conspiracy theorists have pointed out that when the first moon landing was shown on live television, viewers could clearly see the American flag waving and fluttering as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin planted it. Photos of the landing also seem to show rippling in a breeze. The obvious problem here is that there's no air in the moon's atmosphere and therefore no wind to cause the flag to blow. Now, there's been countless explanations being put forward to disprove the phenomenon as anything unusual. NASA claimed the flag was stored in a thin tube and the rippled effect was caused by it being unfurled before being planted. Other explanations of all the ripples caused by the reaction force of the astronauts touching the aluminum pole, which is often shown in video footage that you can check out online.
Right.
So there's no air. There shouldn't be any movement. There's nothing to push or resist on the flag.
I love how even NASA can't quite figure out how a flag is waving in space. They can get there. We got the scientific know-how to put man on the moon, but oh man, how's that flag wave? I don't know. You guys want to get together on this?
That's a good point.
The greatest minds in the world. Okay, I don't know. Is it the ripple effect from the vibration of the pole? Was it because they unfurled it from the tube? I don't know.
It was that tube. Yeah. It was a tube that we folded and rolled it up into. Yeah.
Watch the footage on YouTube. Make your own decisions, folks. Jason and I don't know. We don't know.
If NASA can't explain it well, I'm definitely not going to explain it.
Yeah, I can't explain it. But maybe NASA will come figure it out one day and let us know why the flag was waving. Okay. Number 9, the active impact crater. Okay. So the claim goes, if NASA had really landed on the moon, there would be a blast crater underneath the lunar module to mark its landing. On any video footage that you can see for yourself or photograph of the landings, no crater is visible. almost as though the module was simply placed there. Now, the surface of the moon is covered in fine lunar dust. This even doesn't seem to have been displaced in photographic evidence. Much like the waving flag theory, however, the lack of an impact crater has a slew of potential explanations. NASA maintains that the module requires significantly less thrust in the low gravity conditions than it would have done on Earth. So again, I like how they allow the low gravity to explain the no crater, but they don't allow for the low gravity to explain the waving flag.
And they have potential explanations. What is the explanation?
Well, the other one is that the surface of the moon itself is solid rock, so a blast crater wouldn't probably be feasible anyway. So in the same way that an airplane doesn't leave a crater when it touches down on a concrete airstrip. I haven't seen footage recently, or do we have footage of the module landing on the crater? Don't we have that when it's coming down?
I believe I've seen a little bit of dust being tossed up. Yeah.
This is my ignorance, but I'm posing the question to the listeners. Now, the module is on the ground, and Buzz and Armstrong step out while Ed and Neil were walking around the moon. Michael Collins, he had the task or duty to stay in the main ship as it circled the moon. So when I guess Neil and Buzz got back into this lunar module, they were able to pop back up and connect with Michael Collins.
Yeah, they coordinated a rendezvous.
How do they? That to me alone is just scary. If this truly happened, I'm sounding very skeptical because I'm just trying to think. Again, I'm not a scientist, but they had to take off from the moon and connect with the orbiting Michael Collins craft.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, there you go. So number 9, long story short though, number 9 is the evidence of there's a lack of an impact from the lunar module. I kind of like this one because I bet you if I was to put a lawnmower on the moon, it's going to leave a circle where the fans are spinning. I can't imagine any kind of thrust doesn't leave some sort of mark there, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, they say it's dust and then they say it's hard rock. So, I mean, is it dust on hard rock? I mean...
Well, they got footprints in the sand or footprints there, but yeah.
Actually, I just thought of this as we're talking when you said that. If there's a footprint in the fine dust, then the thrusters blast off. Would not his footprint be disturbed? Because it would have been right outside of the module, the moon landing module.
I guess we'd have to get photos of that after it took off, yeah.
I think they've gone back to, like, oh, there's his footprint.
Yeah,
because they went back to it would be a protected. I mean, because there's no atmosphere, there shouldn't be any wind to blow it away. So I'm not sure if it's disappeared when other people have come back to look at it.
I just look at this picture, like, what is going on here? Like, where's that light source coming from? Is that one of the ones, two light sources?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so here you go. Okay, this is yours.
Yeah. So multiple light sources. So on the moon, there's only one strong light source, the sun. So it's fair to suggest that all shadows should run parallel to one another, like a way a sundial, right?
Right. Yeah, of course.
But this was not the case during the moon landing. Video and photographs clearly show that shadows fall in different directions. Conspiracy theorists suggest that this must mean multiple light sources are present, suggesting that the landing photos were taken on a film set. NASA has attempted to blame uneven landscapes on the strange shadows, with subtle bumps and hills on the moon's surface causing the discrepancies. This explanation has been tossed out the window by some theorists. How could hills cause such large angular differences? In many images, lunar module's shadow clearly contradicts that of the rocks in the foreground at almost a 45-degree angle. If anybody's poked around, I mean, this light source issue and it is one that comes up over and over again. And anybody that understands shadowing, if you have a light behind you, all the shadows will be in the exact same angle. They shouldn't really diverge because light doesn't go around corners or whatever. So
I'm just looking at this picture here of the lunar module here, and the astronaut, I don't know which one is here. He sent up something. There's a lot of light coming onto him. So whoever took the photo, where's that light source coming? Is that the sun, I presume? Or maybe? What are those two lights?
Really, the only light would be
have
from
to be the sun.
Now those two lights there, that could be a glare on the lens.
Right.
So let's focus on the main light source. See his shadow?
Yeah, it's coming behind him that way, but the light's
That
coming
way. And then, and you can see a couple of, even some of these smaller rocks on the bottom left. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
See that shadow? It's kind of going almost straight across from left to right. His is coming more of a angle. It is interesting. Again, I'm no physicist. Actually, some of those shadows looks like multiple light sources. It does.
But that is the theory.
Yeah.
So the theory is the armchair conspiracy theorists have seen multiple, what they would consider the shadows don't line up with from a singular light source. So we're
only looking at one picture, you know, so there might be other pictures that are clear or make it even less clear as to what's happening. So, yeah.
Number 7, the Van Allen radiation belt. This was brought up in our discussion because the belt, which is held by Earth's magnetic field that keeps it perpetually in place, we actually played that sound. I think it was the last one that we played on that episode that actually makes a sound. So the astronauts would have to go through this belt. Now, the problem is the Apollo missions to the moon marked the first ever attempts to transport living humans through this belt. The conspiracy theorists contend that the sheer levels of radiation would have cooked the astronauts en route to the moon, despite the layers of aluminum coating the interior and the exterior of the spaceship. And it's my understanding that Van Allen belt is heavily radiated, that it dangerously so is my understanding, but with enough aluminum coating, you're okay.
I heard you need, people have suggested you need about 6 feet of lead.
It makes sense to me. Don't they have that kind of protection on radiation issues on Earth? Radiation protection. Yeah. There you go. When you get an X-ray, they put that lead on you just for a little X-ray.
Yeah. I don't know how long, but how long does it take to get through the radiation belt? Is it
that's the argument.
Second, or is it a couple hours?
That's NASA's argument. Their argument is, well, they've countered that the short amount of time it took the astronauts to transverse the belt means they just received a very little radiation.
Yeah. So there's a space shuttle mission where they apparently got, outside of going to the moon, they got the closest to the radiation belt ever, and people were saying when they close their eyes, they can actually see through their eyelids.
Yeah, I've heard. Oh, it's scary.
Were they like testing it out? I don't know. Like they would have already known what was required. Yeah.
Again, I don't know how much radiation it takes to cook somebody. I wouldn't want to go through this belt. That would scare me a little bit. Think of a human-sized microwave, okay? It's a microwave. Isn't that the same type of radiation, microwave? Like radiation? Is that because aren't you radiating your food to a degree? I was like, how much aluminum would you feel comfortable being in that you're not going to get nuked?
6 feet.
Yeah.
Of lead, not aluminum.
Yeah. Well, it has to be light to travel. See,
I know. But they had the technology in '69.
That's right. They had to figure it out.
These are just hoaxes and conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Silly rabbits. Okay. Yeah. Number 6.
Okay, an unexplained object. After photographs of the moon landings were released, theorists were quick to notice a mysterious object shown in the reflection of an astronaut's helmet from the Apollo 12 mission. The object appears to be hanging from a rope or wire and has no reason to be there at all, leading some to suggest it is an overhead spotlight typically found in film studios. The resemblance is questionable given the poor quality of the photograph, but the mystery remains as to why something is being suspended in midair, or rather lack of air, on the moon. The lunar module in other photos appear to have no extensions from it that matches the photo, so the object still remains totally unexplained. So let's take a look at the picture, Ryan.
Right here in this helmet here.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like a light. It looks like a light fixture. I would say it looks like an above lighting that's not turned on.
Right.
It almost looks like a ceiling fan. There it is. They showed you. There's
it's like an old school pot light theater. Yeah, like an old school theater light.
That's exactly what it is, and it's in its helmet. I love how NASA. We don't have any explanation, but that's an image that we can't explain. Deal with it.
Yeah, that is a oddity. I mean, could be bad film.
It could just be a smudge. Could be tang powder on his helmet. Who knows?
Fingerprint. Could it be a fingerprint from inside,
but you see the close up there. It's
I know I see it, but I'm just trying to be non-conspiratorial.
NASA has been mum on that. They're like, we'll let that one slide. So, number 5, slow motion walking and hidden cables. In order to support claims that the moon landings were shot in a studio, conspiracy theorists had to account for the apparent low gravity conditions, which must have been mimicked by NASA. So it has been suggested that if you take the moon landing footage and increase the speed of the film to 2.5 times, that astronauts appear to be moving in Earth's gravity. I've actually done this on YouTube. It's fun. It's true.
They do look like they're bouncing around on wires and trampolines.
Like a Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
Don't have to believe it, but it's fun, and you can do these tests yourself, and you can see what we're talking about. As for the astronauts' impressive jump height, which have been impossible to form in Earth's gravity, hidden cables and wires have been suggested as giving the astronauts some extra height. Again, if you go on YouTube, if they're still there, they were there 10 years ago. But if you go on YouTube, you can see the cables in some of these videos. They're pointed out quite clearly. Some screenshots or video frames, outlines of alleged hidden cables can be seen. And, on your own investigation, of course, for an audio podcast, we can't show that, but just Google it. Have fun. Enjoy the rabbit hole.
They definitely look like they were having fun.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to do. Are you kidding? Sure, bouncing around.
It looks pretty compelling, honestly. They do look like they're on cables.
Yeah.
But it's just the gravity, lack of gravity. Anyway, lack of stars. One compelling argument for the moon landing hoax is the total lack of stars in any of the photographs or video. There are no clouds on the moon, so stars are perpetually visible and significantly brighter than what we see through the filter of the Earth's atmosphere. The argument here is that NASA would have found it impossible to map out the exact locations of all stars for the hoax without being rumbled, and therefore left them out, intentionally falling back on an excuse that the quality of the photographs washes them out. Some photographs are high quality, however, and yet still no stars are shown. Certainly eerie, considering you can take pictures of stars from Earth in much lower quality and see them. This is an interesting one because I actually think on their landing, the news conference after they had landed, they have conflicting evidence about the amount of stars that they saw versus what the pictures from the moon are.
I've heard, I think the earliest understanding I have of this is something, again, the sun washes out the stars. I don't know why that is, because even like at a dusky night when the sun's still in the sky, you can see stars.
Yeah.
Stars still come through. So why don't they come through on the moon?
We can at times even see planets.
Yeah, Venus or Mars.
You don't even need to be a star to be seen.
So we can see the Earth, no problem. So if the sun is shining behind the moon, so you see the sun shining on the Earth from the moon, why is the stars washed out? Why would the stars? I'm trying, because stars are suns, and we know the power that those produce, because we can see them from billions of light years away. Why are they washed out by the sun's glare behind your back? Just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, like if a flashlight hits another flashlight at the exact same angle, like a head-on collision, would you then not see the other flashlight light?
Well, the argument would be the argument is the flashlight is in your eyes. Is what they're trying to argue. I think the Earth. They're looking at the Earth here in this picture. There's no stars behind the Earth. Why not? When we could see stars from the Earth.
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
So NASA found.
They're just saying the photography wasn't very good
back then. So so basically, I see. Okay, sorry. So Buzz is on the moon taking a couple of. He's on the moon taking a couple of photos. The stars don't come out in the photograph. Great. That moon shot is real. I mean, the Earth shot is real. It's a really nice looking Earth from the moon. Looks good.
A beautiful blue dot.
Yeah. All right. This was one of my favorite ones, number 3. I love this one because this one is because even NASA's explanation is pretty funny. I like it. Okay. So one of the most famous photos, and this is a legit photo from the moon landing, shows a rock in the foreground with what appears to be the letter C engraved into it. And you see the picture there, Jay. That's legit. That's the photo.
Yeah.
I love how bright the light is on that. It's just so bright.
It's too bad the stars weren't bright enough for them to hit the film.
Now, the letter appears to be almost perfectly symmetrical, like the letter C, almost like a cursive capital C, meaning it is unlikely. It's unlikely to be a natural occurrence in the rock. It's also been suggested the rock is simply a prop with the C used as a marker by alleged film crew. So this is my understanding of how props work, because they will use in the film and TV industry, they use props for various projects, movies, TV, just like anyone else. They want to save money. They don't make a new moon rock for every moon show. This is marked as C. This will be put in bin C or whatever, bin or bucket C for moon rocks or what have you. And that's why it's marked C. That's how film props are stored or categorized. But had the proper placement of this rock been on the film, it would have been flipped. It would have had the other side of the rock, not the letters showing. The C is on the rock to store it properly, but you want to flip the rock for filming purposes. So a set designer, that's their job to do that, but they messed up in this situation if that is a prop rock. Now, NASA quite haven't figured it out. They have given conflicting excuses for the letter. On one hand, they blame a photographic developer for adding the letter as a practical joke. One of their theories is that somehow somebody got a hold of this photo that NASA got their film developed from, and as a joke, they added the letter C to the original film. So when NASA released the film from the developer, they somehow earmarked or watermarked the rock as a joke. That's a good one. That's a lot of work back then too. While on the other hand, NASA is saying that it may simply have been a stray hair which got tangled up somewhere in the developing process. So again, they're blaming it on the developing process. Either it was intentionally put there by human during developing the film, or it was a hair of some sort landed on the rock where it landed.
A stray hair. It'd be the letter Q. Not the letter C. Curly Q.
It would almost be spelling a word. If that's a hair on a rock, that rock is at least the size of a baseball, let's just say. So I have never seen a hair land like that anywhere.
Well, the only thing I could say is maybe the hair got stuck onto the film when they developed.
But have you ever seen a hair look like that? Like seriously, eyebrow hair or otherwise?
That's what I'm saying. It should be a possible curly Q.
I love how NASA's like, okay, we got two theories here. It's a pube or it's a prankster in our developing process. Okay, good job, NASA. All right, number 2, Jay.
So there's, speaking of hair, layered crosshairs.
Yeah.
So crosshairs in their photos. The cameras used by astronauts during the moon landings had multitude of crosshairs to aid with scaling and direction. These are imprinted over the top of all photographs. Some of the images, however, clearly show the crosshairs behind objects in the scene, implying that the photographs may have been edited or doctored after being taken. The photograph shown above, so we have a picture here, is not an isolated occurrence. Many objects are shown to be in front of the crosshairs, including the American flag in one picture and the lunar rover in another. Conspiracy theorists have suggested NASA printed the man-made objects over a legitimate photograph of the moon to hoax the landings. Although if they really planned on doing this, why did they use crosshairs in the first place? That's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know the significance of these crosshairs enough to say anything. And I don't know if the crosshairs are embedded on the film, so they'd be
They're imprinted over the tops of all the photographs. The crosshairs seem to be behind objects, which is odd. So if it was a crosshair the problem is that this is a camera crosshair. Why is that crosshair like you're aiming your photo? Is what they're talking about. It looks like the crosshairs of a camera, like the old film cameras. You're aiming your center focus, but that crosshair is behind an object. So how did the crosshair should be in front of the object at the very least?
And I'll be honest, in this particular picture, the object of which I have no idea what that is.
So it's part of a module or some sort of space truck vehicle, or I don't know.
It does look a little bit whiter and brighter than the rest of the photo. But I don't know why they would feel the need to add that to the top of whatever pile of junk that it's apparently, like, I don't know what it's on.
If what conspiracy theorists say about the moon landing is true, that the U.S. was racing Russia to get to the moon, then one could then argue that this pish-posh mishmash of stuff to get ready, there's going to be mistakes. So they weren't meticulous. They kind of just rushed this to get this out. So there was the crosshairs. If you're pulling the wool over the public's eyes in 1969, they didn't have high def TVs. They didn't suspect people would have. They didn't look at the internet for 50 years later. Like at this moment, we got to beat the Russians to space. We did it. End of story. Life goes on. But then as time goes on, people are like, history isn't quite.
Yeah, they just do the quick razzle and dazzle and hope everybody is so amazed and shocked that they're not going to they're going to gloss over anything that indicates a mistake.
Well, don't forget, just like 30 years previous, the public was tricked with the War of the Worlds broadcast by Orson Welles.
Right.
So the public, no offense to these people back then, they were a little bit they still kind of believed that commercials were true, that the news told the truth. The governments
don't lie.
The governments don't lie, and what you see is what is the truth. If it's on TV, it's got to be true. Why would they lie to us? So just keep those in mind. But again, that's just in this situation, Jason. This is kind of proof where it seems like a rush job.
All of that equipment, I would love for somebody to explain every single piece of equipment that I'm looking at. Why they decided to design it that way, why it looks that way. Like, what is that piece that's sticking up that's blocking the crosshair?
Yeah.
It just looks so random.
Yeah, what is that piece of equipment for?
Doing, yeah.
What data is it collecting on the moon?
Sounds.
Sure, yeah. Go back to our episode before, space sounds. Last one. This one's called the duplicate backdrop. So there's 2 photos from the Apollo 15 mission that show identical backdrops, despite being officially listed by NASA as having been taken miles apart. So one photo even shows the lunar module. When all the photographs were taken, the module had already landed. So one photo shows the lunar module. So one has the lunar module, one doesn't.
Yeah. So there's a picture of the same skyline, one with the module in it and one without the module in it. Like that horizon, that mountain horizon.
It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
They're supposed to be miles apart.
Yeah.
What took the picture of the module? What took the picture without the module?
Well, it'd be like an astronaut walking around and he'd say, I'm going to take a picture of the skyline or this mountain in the background.
Oh, okay.
And then he's taking a picture of the lunar landing. This is pretty compelling.
Yeah. So hopefully it makes sense for him. It's a little bit tricky to understand without looking at the photos, but one photo does have, it's like Jason was saying, that it's the astronaut taking the photo. That makes the most sense, of course, because it would have to be a man. Yeah. Even in 1969, they didn't quite have the technology to take photos automatically on a rover or anything. So it was a man taking the photo. So a man is on the moon. He just takes a photo of the mountain skyline.
Yeah, a random photo of a mountainous skyline.
And then he takes a photo of the lunar.
With the same background.
With the same background.
Different foreground.
Different foreground. So the foreground's been overlaid, but the background's exactly the same, like the mountain range. So if you're a hardcore conspiracy theorist, it may seem viable that NASA simply used the same backdrop essentially when filming different scenes of their moon landing videos.
That one looks pretty compelling. I don't know enough history on that to trust exactly what we're reading or seeing in this particular.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they weren't on the moon, but it might mean that they played around a little bit with the limited amount of photos that they had.
And NASA has admitted to doing that even with our Earth's photo. They have admitted they have doctored the Earth because they can't take a picture of the Earth with one snapshot. They actually have to take it piecemeal and they don't quite connect. So even they have admitted that, yes, we have to doctor.
Yeah, they basically, it's a drawing. Yeah. And all those swirling clouds. I've seen pictures. They just kind of clone the same cloud.
If you look at them enough, there's the same cloud formation somewhere else on the Earth.
Yeah.
So again, folks, you can go. This is from NASA's own admission that we actually don't have a picture of the Earth. It's pieced together. So NASA, of course, has suggested that the moon is smaller than Earth, so horizons can appear significantly closer to the human eye. Despite this, to say the two hills visible in the photographs are miles apart is false. They aren't miles apart.
They're the same.
Yeah.
They did a pretty good job of overlaying. What
they've done here is they've taken the lunar without the lunar photo, overlaid them, and they're exactly the same. Yeah. Okay. The Stanley Kubrick theory. Now, people who listen to this probably already have heard this. This isn't news to them. So there's a loose extension to all this. That's the popular conspiracy theory states the filmmaker, film director Stanley Kubrick was approached by the U.S. government to hoax the first 3 moon landings. There are 2 main branches of this somewhat crazy theory, as it might sound, but one group of the believers maintained that Kubrick was approached after he released 2001, the movie, in 1968. After NASA came to appreciate the stunning realism of the film's outer space scenes at the time, Another group contends that Kubrick was groomed by the government to film the moon landing long before this, and that 2001 was a stage practice run for him. Or you could even argue it was a, what do you call that, when you kind of control the public's mind to already accept the fact that this is what space looks like.
You're priming them.
Before we get into our worst pick, I'm going to expand on this Kubrick theory, or the idea that this was filmed. What is true, what we do know, that has both agreed upon by conspiracy theorists and by NASA, they did film practice moon landings. Mm-hmm. They rehearsed. Like any exercise, I'm in the military, we practice, we do what's called rehearsals or war games all the time. Fight as you train, and you train as you fight. If man landed on the moon, yes, I would highly recommend, and I find it more than highly possible, it's recommended that you practice what you're going to do. Those practice rehearsals were filmed, and you can see them. You can watch them. They used cable wires. They practiced everything that we quote unquote saw on TV. So here's Ryan's theory. Let's pretend they did land on the moon to kind of middleman this whole thing. What the American public saw was the dress rehearsal. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the technology to relay the moon landing to Earth to people's televisions. In 1969, they just didn't have that streaming service, okay? There's no Red Bull guy in the sky. This is 1969.
Yeah, they didn't have the bandwidth.
I don't think so. Now, again, this is just my ignorance talking. But my theory, my middle ground theory is we all know there was dress rehearsals. Those dress rehearsals did use cable. They then took that, slowed down the footage, put that in America's homes. Then you could argue the astronauts did indeed land on the moon, but the public saw the dress rehearsal. And so when all this footage gets scrutinized by the public, they're like, hey, wires, hey, the flag, da, 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 da. Well, yeah, because you're seeing studio footage. There's my own twist on this. And then Kubrick was indeed hired to provide this kind of trickery to make it look pretty realistic. So when it went into people's homes, they thought it was the moon. The theorists would say, well, Ryan, if you never saw the moon landing, how did we know it ever happened? And my answer, then I don't know. I don't know. You're right. It could very well not have happened. A lot of what we read today in particular, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think it's rehearsal footage we're seeing. The light in the helmet, the sea on the rock, the false waving flag, no indentation on the lunar module, multiple light sources. All of these indicate a studio. Absolutely correct. So if you want to have your cake and eat it too, yeah, they landed on the moon. But the thing that makes the conspiracy theorists go nuts is they're absolutely right. They are seeing studio footage, and that studio footage is what was filmed in people's homes. The lie is that they didn't tell the public, you're seeing the dress rehearsal. We did land on the moon, but we can't really show it. So we're going to show you the dress rehearsals. But that sounds...
And that is the problem. Yes. And that is the problem with dishonesty, is you are introducing problems where there would not have been problems. Because now there's cracks in your story, and it's...
right.
People are unsure.
If we're being lied about this, then what else are we being lied about, and so forth and so
exactly. Forth. I mean, if anybody's gone through any type of experience where they've been lied to or traumatized in a certain way, you start getting like, okay, I've been lied here. So how do I know that you're not lying to me now? And how do I know that you're not lying to me now?
Saying that there's no more lies. Like, okay, no, but that's the end of the lies. At what point does the lies end?
Yeah. It's unfortunate that people are seeing things that could indicate a studio situation. Probably would have been better to do exactly what you said, to say, we are dramatizing our experience.
Yeah. They're on the moon. This is what it would have looked like had you been able to see the footage.
Yeah. Our technology doesn't allow us to bring back proof.
Yeah. But this is what it might look like.
It allows us to land there, but doesn't allow us to bring back any real proof.
So, but that's just Ryan's theory, the middle ground theory.
I like that theory. I've kind of settled into that middle ground as well before myself.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't prove that they were there.
No, and that's the problem. Is now where's the proof?
And that is the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
so we don't we're still having a hard time proving that they were there. It's still kind of in NASA's corner giving us the proof that they were really there. Because the proof they have has so many different... with extraordinary claims comes extraordinary proof. And they actually having a hard time with the extraordinary proof.
And that's why they conveniently got rid of all the studio tapes.
And all the evidence.
The moon landing. Yeah, how they got there.
Which would tell me, they don't want to show us how they did it because how they did it isn't real. They didn't have that technology then.
At least to properly record it.
Right. Okay. So all good stuff. Again, we have just tip of the iceberg. I'm sure there's websites, Google fake moon landing, and they'll have hundreds of evidence. What they see as evidence of why it was falsified. We're going to assume that all these whole evidence claims are true, but we are going to pick what we think is the one that least makes their argument for the conspiracy theorists. So, like, if we had to tell the conspiracy theorists, look, drop one of these to prove your point, which one would you want to tell them to drop?
So number 10, the waving flag, lack of impact crater, multiple light sources, the Van Allen radiation belt, the unexplained object. So
In the
reflection
helmet.
in the guys.
Yeah.
In the helmet. Slow motion walking and hidden cables, lack of stars, the sea on the rock, the layered crosshairs, the duplicate backdrop.
Okay. The one to me that I just don't know enough about science. So if man was on the moon, and if this photograph is a legit photograph, I can't explain why it's happening, how it's happening, because I just don't know science and physics and all this stuff, how light works. I would say the one of the 10 that I would say, you know what, you don't have to make this the point of contention that this could have been a falsified landing, is the lack of stars. I would have the hardest time explaining that. Like, I personally would have a hard time explaining it myself anyway. So I'd be like, ignore that one. Ignore the Earth's photograph from the moon, and ignore the fact there's no stars around the Earth. There might be a whole lighting physics thing where the way light travels from the moon's surface and the atmosphere, the atmosphere around the moon, or the lack of, that causes.
You're suggesting that's the weakest argument?
If I had to give this list of 10 to a doubter or defender of the moon landing, I just wouldn't bring up the star one. I would find that one the hardest one to explain to a novice truther, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Just that's the one that doesn't, like, oh, that's crazy. It's a big thing to have no stars. Like, it sounds like there's no stars. It's almost as crazy. There's no sun. When you're on the moon, the sun's gone. It sounds big, but at the same time, like, maybe it really is just an easy explanation. There's no stars in the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it in that way. I think the flag, for me, the very first one, I would have to see the footage of exactly, when they planted it, how long. If I put the flag in the ground and wiggled it in zero gravity, there would be movement of the flag. I would think, like, vibration through the pole. Like, if I grabbed their spacesuit and wiggled it, there would be wrinkling and movement of the fabric. I think if they planted the flag.
So I'm showing Jason the flag, and you can go into YouTube, folks, and just Google Apollo 11 raising of the American flag and see for yourself what it looks like.
He walked right through the flag, and I can see how that. They're definitely moving it around quite a bit. He walks right through it. They're touching it, and they're having a tough time sticking it into the ground.
Let's read some of the YouTube comments. This is from NASA's official website. How come we've gone to the moon multiple times in a 3-year period, but haven't gone back in 48 years?
Just that alone is the strongest argument.
Why not go back? Wouldn't that be fun? Imagine being an astronaut today after 50 years. Like, come on, can I just have one? Can I step on the moon just once? How hard can it be? You guys did it 50 years ago. Anyway, so again, just even the comments of the people are just completely skeptical of this garbage. The average public today, we have such a plethora of information in science now, 50 years later, that people are just tired of being lied to, and they're just, what's going on here? Come on, NASA, you're not fooling us here.
And these top 10 are like kind of the top 10 that most people are somewhat familiar with. If you could dig deeper than the top 10, it's crazy how people have been able to identify other issues.
Well, the two biggest ones weren't even the list.
They're even more compelling than these ones.
Was the destroying of the evidence of the moon. Ladies and gentlemen, we just did a quick search of the interview that was done. I forget who it was done by. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist person per se, but I do know that YouTube has changed its algorithm on their. It's hard to find conspiracy theories on YouTube. I just typed in evidence of moon landing destroyed. That's just what I put in for a search. All the top searches right away are how these things are debunked. I'm just saying that's the top search. That's not what I even asked for.
One says, where are the moon landing tapes? Where are the lost Apollo 11 moon landing tapes?
Over the years, I made several videos regarding so-called astronaut Don Pettit, basically the head of mockery when it comes to NASA. I find it very interesting what he says during this interview from a few months back. He basically states the technology to go back to the moon has been destroyed. He'd love to go back in a nanosecond, but that technology does not exist anymore. But then he goes on to talk about going to Mars, which I find very bizarre, saying it's been destroyed. How was it destroyed? He doesn't go into details how this so-called technology that they used to go to the moon years ago. Take a listen to what he says here.
Astronauts are really, really good at making pictures in space that look like you've never left the planet. In fact, it's almost hard-pressed to tell whether you're in space or not in this picture. You know, we've got some fancy backdrops, I guess.
What a strange person this is on this so-called astronaut, Don Pettit. Now I'm going to play the video clip itself with Don Pettit again being interviewed. Just very bizarre interview. Not going into details how this so-called technology to go to the moon has been destroyed. Take a listen.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
And with that goofy look on his face, he states the only limit to human future is our own imagination. So I find it very interesting. He's not saying it's based on technology, what's feasible based off technology. He says it's based on our imaginations. So when it comes down to it, like I play this video clip I'll show in a second with William Shatner stating, science and science fiction are one and the same. There's no difference whatsoever. Take a listen.
My question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction?
They're both the same. The mystery of science fiction is what I'm talking about. Science and science fiction are essentially the same.
Thank you very much.
How do you prove a black hole? How do you know those gravitational waves proved the collision of two black holes?
Somehow, eventually, they are able to observe phenomena.
No, they can't observe. It's too far away. It's too theoretical. How do we know what they're saying is true? You know what it really is? It's all science fiction.
Science and science fiction are essentially the same.
Thank you very much.
I was talking with a gentleman from Belcom, and we were discussing the lie. Everything he was telling me was different from what we were being told was the truth. And at one point I asked him, I said, man, you guys, you lied about a lot, didn't you? And instantly he said, no, we didn't lie about certain things. We lied about everything.
You look like you're in a studio, maybe in Omaha, Nebraska or something. The shot is so clear. Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still?
Okay, so yeah, for me, I mean, seeing that flag waving around, I mean, they walked right through it, and it looks like a rippling effect from just the motion. Like, that's to say that that's proof that they weren't there is not very strong to me. That's them banging that pole into the ground to try and get it to stay, and him walking through the flag. Of course, the fabric's going to move with him and then swing back afterwards. To me, is not a very compelling evidence that's proving that they weren't there.
I love the comments from John Q. Public here on this YouTube video. So I think the YouTube video was very fair. I think they showed the what we're talking about, how the tapes were destroyed, whether it was right. Now you'll have to determine, was it accidental or not. A bit of misuse and bad storage and water spray. The combination of degaussing, which is erasing, overwriting, everything. But I love the comments right away. Yep, they recorded Sesame Street over the original. When you hoax something, you got to lose the evidence.
Anyway, one guy's comment is, anybody sick and tired of the lies already?
Yeah.
People are just tired of being lied to.
NASA astronaut Don Petit, I'd go back to the moon in a second, but we lost that technology. It would be too expensive to build up again. Let me say that again. Don Petit, NASA astronaut. I'd go back to the moon in a second, but we, NASA, lost that technology and it would be too expensive to build it back up. It's like Apple saying it's too expensive to build a VCR.
It doesn't make sense to me.
So if Elon Musk can, doombug ride in space, why is it too expensive for NASA to rebuild the technology from 50 years? Why is it more expensive to do something that you could do 50 years ago? Is it more expensive to build a rotary phone or an iPhone?
Yeah. Or to pretend that you don't have the technology to build a rotary phone. I suspect the technology is easier than an iPhone.
But I'm saying you and I could probably build a rotary phone before we built an iPhone. You and I.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
I love this. This is a great comment. What a coincidence. Hey, we run out of tape, so let's record with the landing of the moon.
Well, that's just it. We had the most historical event, and we can't protect that one tape. They went through 4 million boxes of tapes, and of the 4 million that you decided to record over, it's the moon landing. There wasn't another weather system satellite footage that you could have recorded over.
At the very end, it's food for thought. Do your own investigation. At the end of the day, if you truly believe the images you saw on TV in July 20th, 1969 are the exact same events that took place on the moon at that same time, that's fine. And that's the world you occupy, and that's the world you live in. And it's a safe place to be. There's no shame in that. There's no harm in that. If I pour water from my faucet and it goes into my glass, I don't have to explain anything. It's just there. There it is. There's no, I've filled up my water. The faucet produced water and the water went to my glass. No questions, no confusion, no conspiracy. It just is. And if I filmed that and showed it to my brother, it just is. Here it is, Jay. Here's my water. Just like I said, it would be in my glass. I don't know why the moon landing has so many loose ends and such crazy. Like, why does it have to be so complicated? Just, did we land on the moon? Here's the footage. Like, why is there, why is it so complicated? Why, if it is just what it is, why isn't it just what it is?
My only explanation to that is that majority of the people aren't smart enough to understand how they did it. And we can't grasp the technology that they utilized to do it. So therefore, we don't understand. And so it raises questions. Also, people have been lied to, and so they question more and more. They question people who lie to them. And it shows that they've done a really poor job of explaining their experience.
Remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud, and we're here to help you find it. If you enjoyed this conspiracy theory, let us know, and I'm sure we'll tackle another one. We talked about the Mars one. We might give that one, give it a few episodes from now, but the conspiracy ones are always fun to do. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was fun. Thanks, brother.
Gamma Gator Productions.